So regarding the little scroll, this is part two. I just made the first part, and this will be part two. So what happens is you partake of that little scroll. It's sweet in the mouth, meaning you're excited. You just got a new revelation from God. You just came to a new level. But it's bitter in the stomach when you start to realize that you get cranky in church when you see the pastor and all the false teaching out there. You get cranky when you see someone like Creflo Dollar taking up another offering so he can buy another jet. Meanwhile, if a single person in his church isn't provided for, he's out of order completely having that jet. If there's a single need, a single orphan in the whole United States that's not provided for, who's saved and believes, I hate to say saved, but who believes in Jesus, and he's going to spend $65 million on a jet, and the bitterness comes in. And that's a basic revelation. You don't have to be real high up in the Lord to have a revelation of that. Same with someone like oh, Jesus said, one of you, he said of his disciples in I think it's Matthew, Mark, or Luke 6, or I think it's John 6:14 or 6. I can't remember where it is. 670. Oh, here it is right here. Jesus answered them. John 6:70. Jesus answered them, "Did I not choose you, the 12?" He's referring to the 12 disciples. And he said, "Yet one of you is a devil." Okay, and he was referring to Judas Iscariot. He didn't say one of you has a devil. He didn't say one of you is like a devil. He didn't say one of you needs the devil cast out. He said one of you is a devil. Do you know how hard it is for Peter not to get bitterness towards Judas? Especially when, let's say Judas, what if Judas hadn't committed suicide and got promoted in the ministry and started taking up more offerings and asking for more offerings, and then Judas is the guy who could afford to be on TV because he's just ruthless about getting all the money. So now Judas is the one preacher on TV, and then Judas gets up there and he has no problem putting his hand in the offering, and since God hasn't stopped him yet, okay, we got to assume that God hasn't put the brakes on Judas Iscariot, because those whom I love I rebuke. And if God loved him, God would have rebuked him a long time ago. Let's talk about, here's what the Lord told me. Here's the word of the Lord. Okay. Now, before I tell you this, if you go out to a bar and it's a gay bar, and you sit down and there's two gay guys sitting next to you kissing, and you know they're not going to heaven, did you judge them? Did you condemn them? No. You just know. Well, when it comes to Kenneth Copeland, he is a devil. He doesn't have a devil. He doesn't need a devil cast out. He is a devil. And that's the word of the Lord. And so you get a revelation of that and you realize, wait, here's this guy on every Christian channel for 2 hours a day with multiple Lear jets getting promoted in the natural up, 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 up. Meanwhile, when I was making only $100,000 a year, which is nothing compared to this kind of income, the Lord told me it was too much, quit my job, give my car away, and walk away from it. And then you got bitterness. It's sweet in the mouth when you receive the revelation. Thank you, Lord, I'm called to be a prophet. Bitter in the stomach when you realize, man, all these wicked people are getting promoted. I never forget, I worked at this company where I think my first week I made $2,000 in commissions. Like, it was a quick $2,000 a week job. How frequently do I remember training some kid, some 18-year-old kid. It was his first job. He was making $2,000 a week. How'd you like to be in high school still and making $2,000 a week? I'm just saying. And I remember on Wednesday night I would go to church, and there was a whole group of guys who were working for that same company. We all went to the same church, and none of them were going to church on Wednesday night. I would still go to church on Wednesday night, Friday night, and if the church was having a week of some camp meeting week or something, I'd go to church every day during the day and in the afternoon. So I'd skip work altogether. Luckily, we were independent contractors. And I remember this girl came up to me and she says, "This makes me sick." And she said, "Do you know you are the only one out of all those 25 or 30 guys who come to this church?" She said, "You're the only one who still comes to church during the week services." And she was just disgusted. And I remember just laughing, and she had drank the cup of bitterness. She had a revelation that here's these guys, now they're making a little bit of money, and they're going to walk away and not come to church anymore. But I was still going to church, and then it reflected on my paycheck. It also reflected on the leads that I would get. In other words, the guys who were sold out and not going to church anymore got the better leads, were making $3,000 to $4,000 a week just in sales commissions, not even being sales managers. Some of them got promoted to being managers, making $5,000, $6,000 a week. Meanwhile, I went down to like $1,200 a week. But I was serving God. Then when it comes time to go out and start your own ministry, who do you think had the money to go out and buy a ministry van and pay a lease on a little storefront somewhere? It was those guys who sold out for money. Who do you think can afford to buy the Learjet? It's the Kenneth Copelands out there. And that's why the mark of the beast is going to happen. Now somebody might say, "You just judged and condemned a man." No, 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 no. This is where the mark of the beast comes in. This is why it's very important that the mark of the beast happens before the rapture. Because the mark of the beast is gonna prove everything. It's gonna prove what I'm telling you right now. And I'll tell you this, if Kenneth Copeland truly is a child of God, which the Lord told me, he just like Jesus said to his disciples, he said, "One of you is a devil." And it happened to be the one who had no problem reaching into the God's offering and helping himself to whatever was in there. And that's exactly what Kenneth Copeland does. Just because the congregation says, "Yes, sir, we think you should have your jet," doesn't mean that God says so. Let God be true and all men a liar. They're deceived by their own congregation. They've set up idols in their heart. If a true prophet of God were to go to their church and try to correct them or rebuke them, they'd be dragged out. I'm just saying. And once that prophet is sitting on the curb outside the church going, "What do I do now, Lord?" And then all of a sudden that prophet has to walk in bitterness, having unforgiveness in his heart because he just got dragged out of the church for prophesying. And it was God. It was God. The prophet knows it was God that caused him to say that. But everybody in the service is sitting there going, "Yeah, get him out of here. We want our money. We want to believe God for $1 million." I'm just saying. Meanwhile, the prophet who just got rejected from the church is sitting out there kicked to the curb going, "What do I do now, Lord?" God says, "I'll provide." But in the same way that Apostle Paul appealed to Caesar, they said, "Paul, you're in jail, brother. You don't have to appeal to Caesar. You can go free right now." He says, "No, I appeal to Caesar. I'll stay in the jail. This is the fulfillment of my calling." I mean, is that hope? There's no hope in this world for the prophet of God, especially after you partake of the little scroll. And there's another scroll beyond that that's even smaller, that's an even higher revelation. that like John, when he wrote the book of Revelation, was operating from another scroll. I'm just saying. He was writing the book of the Revelation from a scroll that he would receive that was higher up than other people's scrolls that normal Christians would operate in. It was his gifting, but in the midst of that, God gave him another scroll. We see that in Revelation chapter 10. Okay? So there's always another level, there's always another revelation, and many times if you're going to come up higher, you're going to have to shed the things of the earth, and don't be deceived by these people who seem like they're prosperous and walking around talking about "I am saved" and and having Mercedes-Benz and taking up offerings and preaching all over the world. And that doesn't mean, listen, the Lord spoke to me about Joyce Meyer. I know she's a child of God. I would never say she's a devil, ever. And Benny Hinn. I have special favor for Benny Hinn. Okay, so it's not like I'm just out here randomly choosing people out, because Benny Hinn has quite a bit of finance and wealth. But all that matters is who stands firm in their faith in the midst of when persecution and hardship comes. Okay? And if you're not ready for it, it's coming. We've been in a bubble of protection here in the United States. But in 1 hour, the beast is going to come to power. It's the hour of God's judgment. Revelation chapter 14. After the gospel is out to every nation, language, tribe, and people, then the hour of God's judgment comes. If you want to do a Bible study, look for the word hour in the book of Revelation. Jesus said nobody knows the day or the hour. He was talking about two different things: the day of Christ and our being gathered to him, and the hour of God's judgment. Two different events. The hour of God's judgment is the hour that the beast, the government of the Antichrist, comes to power. Revelation 17:12. Okay? It's the hour that Babylon the Great falls. Revelation chapter 18. In 1 hour she's burned with fire. It's the hour of trial to come upon the whole earth. Revelation 3:10. So in 1 hour, there's an hour coming. Right now we're living in prosperity. We're in America. Everything's going great. But there's coming an hour of time. And in the United States, it happens during the day. In Russia, it's nighttime when it happens, because I've seen visions of it. World War III, when it happens, when the nukes fly, it's the sixth seal of Revelation. The stars fall from the sky. The sky is rolled up like a scroll. The ground is shaken. It's a worldwide earthquaking of the earth. Every time I saw a vision of a guy who was 40 miles away from Denver when these nukes, some of them have a special timing device where they detonate just above the surface of the ground, giving just maybe about 10 feet of acceleration distance. In other words, if you drop the nuke into the ground and detonate it, it's going to create an earthquake and a crater. If you drop that just the right, perfect distance above the ground, it's going to create a shockwave that reflects off the ground. And as it's reflecting, it's a double shockwave going outward. And it's powerful enough to knock a guy off a snowboard 40 miles away. And that's the vision that I saw. And we're talking about multiple in every city and all over the world, this type of thing happening. And these nuclear bombs, you have no idea. It's thermo. It's the same energy. It's the same chemical reaction that's happening on the surface of the sun, which if you can't even look at the sun and it's 93 million miles away. Now imagine that same explosive material expanding 100 miles away, 200 miles away, as opposed to 93 million miles away, which is where the sun is at. That's why they're called stars. Stars falling from the sky. The sky rolled up like a scroll. Everybody hiding in the dens of the rocks. The sixth seal is also the hour of God's judgment. At the end of that hour, the beast comes to power. Revelation 17:12. And the beast is being held back until him who is taken away. Who is it that's taken away? It's the U.S. military, basically, the United States. And who launches the first strike is China. Okay, Revelation 13, the enormous red dragon in Revelation 12 and 13 with 7 heads. Okay, the enormous red dragon would normally be the devil. Okay, the Lucifer, Satan. But then the next verse it says, with 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation 17:12 says, the 7 heads and 10 horns, the horns you saw are 10 leaders of the beast, the government of the Antichrist. So when you see the red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, that's the government and regime of the Antichrist. That represents China. The feet of the bear in Revelation chapter 13, the bear is Russia. The government of the Antichrist is Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Turkey allied together, launching nukes, taking over the world under nuclear threat. in Revelation chapter, and this is all from this is maybe not the little scroll as written of in Revelation chapter 10, but this is Revelation. God gave me a revelation of the book of Revelation. I consumed a separate scroll from God, so to speak, spiritually, figuratively. And then I got a revelation of the book of Revelation. That's why it's the 7 seals that lead into the 7 trumpets, and there's 7 angels that lead into the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And the 7th bowl and the 7th trumpet are the same event. So when it comes to the 7th trumpet, there's going to be an angel who sounds the 7th trumpet. And then there's another angel who has the bowl of God's wrath. When he hears the angel sound the trumpet, the 7th bowl of God's wrath, that angel takes the bowl and pours it out. That doesn't mean that the first trumpet is the same as the first bowl of God's wrath and the second trumpet is the same as the second bowl. But the 7th trumpet and the 7th bowl of God's wrath are the same event. And so these 2 sequence of events are happening simultaneously. And the bowls and the seals, the 7th seal is here, the same thing, but the bowls and the seals go like that.